Around 2,000 years ago, there was a city. A city of dreams during the peaceful times of the Roman Empire. A city that we have all heard of. Pompeii. Before the volcano exploded, it was a city filled with happy, innocuous people going about their daily lives in blissful ignorance. Their blissful ignorance isn't much different from ours today as we lie around listening to propaganda. I lived in Pakistan. When people hear that, their immediate response is to tell me how lucky I am that I'm still alive and well. They imagine Pakistan as a war-torn terrorist state where Osama bin Laden died. But it's nothing like that. The people welcomed me, and no, they don't plan on blowing me up later either. Yet these pious, peaceful Muslims are unwelcomed. They are the victims of suffering after 9/11, who are the minority that claim to do what they did in the name of Allah. We have failed to notice that these so-called jihadists have also implemented an unsystematic system of torture on their own fellow Muslims, which is a widespread issue across Syria and Iraq. How many times have we looked at someone seemingly different from us and been unable to empathize? How many times have we subconsciously scorned him or her? We have to acknowledge that atrocities have been committed by all races and all religions and cannot be characterized by it. Christians have slaughtered many in the Crusades, and the Jews have exploited many in the Palestinian conflict. We cannot associate Islam with terrorism, not when Islam means peace and terrorism is war. Yet we are bridged by this gap of cynicism and ignorance that must heal in order for us to achieve progress, because there are many things that we, as global citizens, must do. In an increasingly globalized world where we are ignorant only by choice, our destinies are more intertwined than ever in the past. There are so many forces, so many pressures changing the world today. Environment, politics, disease. And yet, in many cases, we choose to remain languid. This very moment, as I stand here speaking, millions are dying of hunger while we sit comfortably. 80% of the world's population lives on less than 300 baht a day, and yet we spend it if it's nothing. There are places where a woman can't go home alone without the fear of getting raped. Children aren't going to schools. Whatever we're doing, it's not enough. The strength of the public opinion should have been enough to stop Russia and China from vetoing the resolution to take Syria to the International Criminal Court and try for war crimes last year. Or in my own country, Thailand. Before the military dictatorship coup, we should have been able to stop our own corrupt government from ripping off our farmers. I guess I am to blame for that too. Or America. The United States foreign policy have been subjected to much international attention. 2 years after the Iraq War began, 70% of Americans still believe that Saddam Hussein was personally involved in the 9/11 attacks, according to a Washington Post survey. Before we do something, pay our taxes, or send our families off to die, maybe we should make sure that we're doing it for the betterment of the world. And there's also the recent case of the Charlie Hebdo attacks in France. Not long ago, the moral controversy of the cartoons published were a moot point. Francois Hollande called it a direct attack on freedom of speech. However, the French law of press subjects to several prohibitions, some of which include discrimination, which the magazine clearly defies. I do not, by any means, condone terrorism, but it's not as black and white as the media paints it out to be. Let's face it, publishing those sickening images would be enough to incite hatred from any extremist group, freedom of speech or not. The 17 people who died in France, I give my condolences. But I also must pay heed to the thousands of Nigerians killed by the Boko Haram long before there was any international attention, long before there was any call to arms last year. While the world is still erupting over the 17 that have died in France reportedly for freedom of speech, thousands are dying for the freedom to live. And I lived in Nigeria. I have laughed with them, I have learned with them, I grew up with them, and I just lived with them. Their souls are no less precious than the souls of the children of the West, yet their stories remain forgotten, left to haunt the villages that they were murdered in by the Boko Haram. These are no numbers, these are real people with mothers and fathers and sisters and sons and daughters and friends. And some died running, shot behind their backs, or defending their brothers. And there are thousands more orphans, widows, and loved ones left behind. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, why? Why aren't we seeing what's going on? Why aren't we standing up for the oppressed? And why are we oppressing them? This is our world, a common world. Everyone should share a common responsibility. Don't quote me on this, quote Ban Ki-moon. But where was the world when help was needed in the ethnic violence in Bangladesh? The Uganda dictatorship, the Red Terror in Ethiopia? How about the war in Liberia and Sierra Leone? How about the Darfur genocide, Burundi, Rwanda, Cambodia? Where was the world? We cannot lull ourselves into complacency anymore. I don't want to live in a world where when half the world is suffering, the half does nothing about it. I want to live in a world without backstabbing and double-dealing hypocrisy. I want to live in a world where our freedoms cannot be arbitrarily curtailed for the purposes of control. I want to live in a world with peace. As I said, we can't lull ourselves into complacency anymore. We must think and we must act. Because one day, our volcano might explode just like it did in Pompeii. And then we would fail. We would fail to stop the millions dying with nothing more than the crime of living. We would fail to prevent the crimes that our own race has created. We would fail to prevent the infringement upon human dignity. We would fail at compassion. And most importantly, we would fail at being human beings, the most fundamental mandate of our lives, and arguably the reason that we are here for. In the wise words of Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. I challenge you to do that someday. You might not agree with me, but that's okay. I challenge you to think for yourself, see for yourself, and act for yourself, so that one day, maybe, just maybe, we can make a difference. Thank you.